we knew that we wanted to do something very specific, and that freed us from trying to be like anyone else.
And welcome to Going Home. I'm Craig Young, and we're going to be looking at people, families, ministries, churches, and seeing where God is moving through His people.
Well, it came through a desire to live in some kind of authentic community and to see Jesus really lived out instead of reduced to kind of a Sunday experience. And right here, you get a sense of the table. It's the first thing you see when you get in. Probably God has got a bigger plan that may or may not include my success.
You're talking about a church within a church.
Going Home Show, brand new week here with Pastor Josh from the Table, and going to be talking about, I guess, innovative churches, a bit of the story and how this came together. It hasn't just been you, it's been a team of people. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, about 3 years ago when we moved here, me and a church planting buddy, Andy, we brought our wives, both of whom were named Katie, and both of whom were pregnant. Along with my 2-year-old toddler, we brought them over to Victoria and decided to move here.
So both named Katie, was that sort of a prerequisite just to...
Yeah, we had duplicating and replicating. I mean,
Yeah.
complicating, there's a bunch of...
And you never get asked that question.
No,
that never ever comes up.
Not much.
Awesome. So tell us just, a little bit about the story of how it all came together. Where did this come from?
Well, it came through a desire to live in some kind of authentic community and to see Jesus really lived out instead of reduced to kind of a Sunday experience. I love Sundays, but it seemed to me that they were more like insulin shots for the Christian life, and we wanted to see something that was a little more holistic and more effective in communicating the love of Christ to people in community. That seemed to be the best place to see Jesus made real.
What brought about this desire to do church differently? Was it a personal thing, or was it, it was from you experiencing church, or just more of just taking a step back and looking at what's going on with the state of church?
Yeah, I think it's more practical. And we looked around, and even my own experiences, I saw that the greatest growth was in smaller pockets of community. And I was reading a lot of literature, and you get this missional church versus attractional church thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, why would I want to choose one over the other? So I'm a convinced Anglican by choice. I wasn't born into it. And so I think ceremony is important. I think that common worship is extremely important to kind of accelerate, amplify our experiences and our common confession. But the real growth in discipleship and even in communicating the very basic nature of the gospel is in smaller groups where you can localize the language and the forms to people in neighborhoods and in people groups.
Right. Why does this feel so challenging? Just, when is it going to get easier here?
Oh, okay, Craig, thank you for bringing that up. I remember clearly, I was in my office at the desk before we had the launch team, before we had the vision party, and I remember having this thought, boy, I can't wait until we get to sustainability and then I can take a break. And I remember even then, what a wicked thought. The goal is never sustainability. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Look, general wisdom, yeah, you're aiming there, fine. But what was hidden, I think, behind my own assumption, that thought, was that if I can get a place where I don't have to rely so desperately on God, then that'll be more pleasant. And it probably would. Honestly, being that kind of, having that kind of dependence.
In some ways, yes.
Is frightening. Because you're constantly putting your faith on the line and you're taking risks. And when you take risks, God may not show up. He may not. You're always one risk away from God not showing up. So you have to the constant conversation was, well, he did this, he did this, he saw us through that month, he saw us through that month. You know what I mean? It's exactly the Old Testament. It's going right back to the previous works of God and trusting in that and having the conversations.
Just remembering.
But even if, here's the thing, part of that conversation that I had with the Lord through Jeremiah, he said, I felt like he said to me, look, I never told you to come to Victoria and in 3 to 5 years you have a self-sustaining community. I said go. Right? So I'm connecting a whole series of points here that leads me to, well, I think God, no, he didn't say that. He said go.
We're in downtown Victoria now, and we want to interview some folks that live in Victoria.
Like, how does something grow like this? Like, what do you do? Like, I know that the Spirit's just moving and working, but
yeah.
Like,
What do you want to know steps?
Yeah.
We had a prayer list of about 200 people, some of whom represented whole congregations of prayers, and we wanted to lay the bedrock in prayer. We hired our first intern before we even launched, and she was an intercessor, meaning that she prayed and she loved to pray. And so she was our first missionary, our urban missionary, so we gave her $500 and she raised the rest of the money to be here for 2 years. And so she prayed for us and was one of our community leaders. That's step one, is the prayer. And then after that, it's networking like crazy. And it's desperate hope. Because we were given some cash, basically 3 years of denominational support compressed into 6 months. After that, we had no money. We had to raise it all. And it was pretty precarious for quite some time. But we spent that 6 months just developing relationships. 3 months into it, my wife was on bed rest for 3 months. So I had a 2-year-old with me while I'm trying to figure out how to start a church. And I tell you what, we had so many barbecues at my place. That pretty much was the most effective means of starting the church.
Yeah.
And have grace. Okay, so you're allowed to have some fist fights, but you gotta hug it out at the end.
So you're talking about 2 of those steps, prayer, networking. What are some of the other things that...
Well, the most crucial thing is vision. And when we were meeting around with other church planters, I think it's only 10% success rate, where 3 to 5 years after a church planter sets out, only 10% of those are still
Wow,
in
eh?
existence after 3 to 5
That's really good motivated.
But one of the common remarks among the church planting leaders, they said, look, a lot of these are just started by angry young men who are just trying not to do what their previous church did.
Yeah.
And that's not a solid vision.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a vision that sets out the strategy in order to reach people and to really connect with others. We knew that we wanted to do something very specific, and that freed us from trying to be like anyone else. And it gave us a confidence about what we're doing. And then when I communicated with people, I could say, hey, look, we want to be a pomegranate. One church with lots of clusters, and those clusters are all going to look differently. We're going to focus more on the clusters than on the pomegranate. So we will meet every other week on Sunday instead of every week on Sunday, and we're going to focus more on homes. Well, look, if I told that to you, you'd go, that sounds good, or you go,
Yeah.
Right? A good vision, someone could say no to.
Yeah, okay.
So it needs to be articulated and clearly set out in the leader. And that's something that everyone can join in on if they agree.
Yeah.
Going off topic! My wife went on bed rest, so I've got this need and desire. The entrepreneurial side of things, I feel like I need to connect with people. I need to put together vision documents. I need to go do fundraising. We're going to run out of money in July. It was scary. And I had people, they just say, hey, don't worry about it. You can't do anymore. Just stop. I'm like, no, you don't. I'm going to run out. We're going to have no money at the end of July when my son Noah was going to be born, July 21st. It's hard. You need to make the decision. So cut the hours to 35, which seems so ridiculous when you're trying to start up, right? Typical startup is you need to really plow through it 60, 70 hours, but here I am doing 35 hours. A lot of those are with my son doing barbecues, and we just kept going though. So as it progressed, and I don't know if it's because, the devil just amps up activity or you just notice it more because you're in ministry, but boy, there was so much illness, Norwalk virus right when we got there, or got to Victoria. A bunch of stuff happened. Just even last year, my wife's mother died suddenly from cancer. Same night, so did my aunt. Both sudden deaths. Just brutal, awful, horrible stuff. But because our leadership has always said, hey, you need to put your family first. You need to put your family first. We've taken that to heart, and me and Andy have both treated our own families that way, that we need to put those as a high priority. All of our leaders at the table have said you need to put your family as a high priority. So most of the pressure is coming from my own,
right,
from myself. But God has not let me put in those hours that I feel like I need to.
Was there any part of you before like this initial launch where you're gonna put it all on the table?
Mm-hmm.
You and Andy have discussed it. You're putting it all on the table, and you're gonna say, "Listen, this is what we're about. This is what we're asking." Is there any part of you that's going like, "Man, I don't. What do you think? Like 50% of the people?"
It's terrifying. Look, I'm pretty comfortable speaking in front of large groups of people, but it's like when you and Bella got together, there was probably a point in which you're like, well, I'm going to go beyond friends, and you get nervous. Yeah. And I was shaking, and I was really nervous. I didn't do a really great job of speaking even during that vision party, because these are people I'd invested in, but it was kind of cautious, and now I'm calling them to commit to 7 launch team meetings, a preview service, and a Christmas party, a 7-Eleven is what we talked about. It's very concrete. You're setting parameters. You're saying, I need you to come and bring and give. Period.
Exactly.
You're still my friend.
Yeah, I know. It's like you don't know, right?
You never know.
Yeah. But it's funny too, because I think that what it is it's actually not about us. Those things that you're asking for, it's about the mission of God. It's about His kingdom. And it's like, that's ultimately what they're saying yes to. They're not saying yes to you. They're not saying yes to Andy or anything like that. So, but it's we feel that way. It's so it's good that you're just obedient to that and just put it out on the table and kind of let yourself die and be like, man, I got to be okay with this because this is where we're going.
Yeah. Well, what I found in Victoria, look, you can get good advice from your aunt. No one's just going to show up to church and for good advice. That people want something to aim for. They want true accountability. They want purpose. They want a sense of mission and belonging. And so for the people that are going to help start up a culture like that, to set a high bar is, even if there's 5, 10 people instead of 50, those are the people that are going to help set that culture deep and help ensure that it's going to continue and carry on. Because we have this model that's a little decentralized going into homes, I need to be able to trust our leaders, that they have the same vision and the values that we have. And so you need to talk very, very seriously about the risks and the costs of joining something like this.
Lots of fresh, innovative ideas and vision, and really just being the hands and feet of Christ. Thank you so much, Pastor Josh, for coming by and hanging out with Going Home. I have one last question. Where are you going, Josh?
I'm going home.